Hi, everybody. Welcome back to She Can't Do That.
But she did it anyway.
Today we have Coach Jenn Wolfe. And in this first episode, we are diving into who she is and how she got to where she is today.
Which is she's a life coach and couples therapist, just a fountain of information. And we're excited to share her story with you.
Welcome to our little cozy, comfy studio.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
It's so good to be here.
It
is so cozy.
Sorry it took you so long.
It's okay. It's
We
LA.
are in LA, and if people know anything about LA, it's the traffic sucks.
Yeah. And if you accept that, you just kind of settle in and do the things you need to do.
Yes, and that's why that's why I can listen to so many podcasts.
Exactly.
Because I'm in my car so much.
100%. So it's a great thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You gotta make your peace with it. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you get
you have to.
aggressive every day.
Totally.
Like, it doesn't make sense.
I mean, I definitely have my moments. I won't lie. There was definitely some honking of horns on my way here. But mostly I was accepting it.
Yeah, it also always depends on if you have an appointment and you really have to be somewhere in like the next 20 minutes and you know you're not going to make it, then it's like stressful.
And people are waiting and you're just like, oh, I hate being late. I'm usually early. I just hate it so much. But
yeah, me too. I'm usually early everywhere. So that's stressful if you have to be somewhere at a certain time and then you're stuck.
I'm perpetually late.
But
are you?
Oh, yeah. My girlfriends have to tell me, like, if we have dinner at 7:30, they all band together and create this lie that our reservation's actually
I
at
have
7.
friends that way.
Yeah.
Yes, we do that to my friends too.
I mean, I didn't even experience this with you. I mean, it's like
because you always come to get me and you're always on time or early.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the 10-15 minutes with you.
Yeah.
Where we want to leave the house at like 10:20 to be here at 10:30.
Yeah.
I get over there at 10:20 and she's like, I still have to take the dog out
Oh
and
my
do
gosh,
this
that
and
is
this
so my
and
friend
this,
Virginia.
all these things. I'm like, okay. But we've never been in a situation yet where it's just like, we have to be there at 10:30.
Yeah.
You know, most of the time it's like, 10:30, 10:35, 10:40. And within the 10 minutes, I feel it's fine. Like, I can't stand people who have like an hour, late.
No.
Which is like, this is just disrespectful.
100%. 100%.
That is just not
No,
okay.
not okay.
The 10-15 minutes, I mean, even in Germany, that was not okay.
Yeah.
Like, Germans are on time.
Yeah. That must be why I'm on time. I have a lot of German in me.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Maybe
It's ingrained in me.
Maybe that is why you're on time. But that had to be something I had to get used to in like living in LA.
Oh, yeah.
The 10-15 minutes.
Yeah. And it is kind of like an expected thing, especially at like a social event, like 15 at least.
It's so funny when somebody invites me to like a party or to something, and it's like, it starts at 8 and it goes till like whatever, 10 or midnight, and I'm there at 8.
Yeah.
Nobody else is there.
No one's ever there at 8.
No.
And I never want to be that person.
That's
That's
like
the
my
one time
worst
where I'm like,
nightmare.
8:30 is when
I'm
the people
way too
show
shy.
up. The host is not even ready at 8.
totally.
Yeah. I'm like,
I don't like the people that come to my events at like exactly.
It was like, you're hosting this. You said 8 p.m. You got to be ready at like 7:50.
It's true.
Okay, so for Sarah, you're going to tell her like 15 minutes after the actual time. And then for me, you tell me 15 minutes or 30.
30 probably.
Before, 30. Before.
Give you leeway.
And then we're on time.
That's awesome. Okay. Now I know.
Learning all the
strategies with you
quirks
guys.
of people.
Totally.
Which is what you do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
I'm sure. All day, every day.
It's absolutely what I do. Yes.
Yeah.
So we want to start with your beginnings, though,
Okay.
with you first. We want to hear a lot about your business, too.
Okay.
Especially Taryn, who is single.
Oh, this is fun.
I'm just putting it out there.
That's exciting.
I'm married for 10 years, so we're like
amazing.
Oh, I just got nervous.
very different.
You didn't know this was going to be
No,
about you and
I'm
your single life.
sweating.
No.
You.
But first, we want to hear your story.
Okay.
Where are you from?
Yeah. So I grew up in a town called Hillsboro, which is in Silicon Valley. It's very close to like Palo Alto and, where all of the Google.
We're from the same area.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Palo Alto.
You did?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I basically did. Like all my friends were there. I went to a private school where people would come in from Palo
I went to
Alto.
a private school.
Wait, my brother went to Menlo.
I went to Sacred Heart.
Oh my God. One of my best friends went to Sacred Heart.
Stop.
Her name was Mary. Wait, was it Mary? It was Mary. Mary Judson.
That's really funny.
And Margot Helm, did they go there? Then they switched over.
Oh my God.
Did I know? I have friends now that put their kids in Sacred Heart.
We probably have like intersecting life stories. I don't know if we're the same probably crossed paths. Oh my God.
I'm sure we have.
Okay.
I love that. Yeah. So Northern California girl, grew up there, but I had always felt drawn to LA my entire life. I'm like, I need to be in LA. And my favorite shows were like Beverly Hills 90210, 90210, and everything in LA I was obsessed with.
Baywatch,
all the things, which ironically enough, my husband was an extra on.
No.
He started his career out there.
Baywatch.
Totally. What a fun job for a young guy to be an extra on. That was good. So all the shows, and I just knew, I'm like, I need to be in LA. So
for what at that time when you
at
were
the
young?
time I thought it was to be an actress, but it was definitely the entertainment industry, and it just called to me since I was 5, and so I just kind of went with it, like, I think I'm supposed to be an actress, and I said that since I was like 5 years old. My parents weren't super loving that idea.
Oh, weird. Never heard
She
that.
can't do that kind of thing. Or if you're going to do it, you have to do it like Julia Roberts style,
Right.
Which put a lot of pressure on it. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll go to college there. So I actually did. I went to UCLA, which was shocking that I got into UCLA. It was very hard to get into at the time. And I was so happy that I got in because I just felt like that was my way to finally get to where I wanted to be this whole time. And so I actually left when I was 18 and never went back.
Did you do drama at UCLA?
Nope. You would think I would. But the thing is, with UCLA, it was more kind of theater oriented. So I wanted to do more, TV, camera and all that. So I definitely studied acting while I was at UCLA, like in acting classes and all that stuff, but it was outside of it. I used UCLA as like a backup because that was what my parents kind of instilled in me, like, you need to have a backup career. So ironically enough, it's exactly what led me to what I do now, because I ended up majoring in sociology, which was like a default. It was so crowded there that I was like trying to choose the majors. They were all full. So I was like, I guess sociology. And so, but it ended up being perfect because I had a degree in sociology, which then led me to a master's in psychology. So it all worked out. But that's how I went from growing up in Northern California to here. And I really skipped ahead there, but
no, that's totally fine. Were you an entertaining kid? Were you the one that was always like on the table dancing and look at me, everybody?
I was definitely loved to be the center of attention. I'm a twin, so I have a twin brother. So I feel like that like fight for attention was always there, and that competition of like there's challenges of being a twin. It's just like standing out, even though he's a boy. Like it's not like I have an identical twin, but it just comes with that kind of dynamic, and it was just always very important for me to stand out and do that. But I was also very afraid of the stage and like shy, kind of. I realized later that, it wasn't acting necessarily. It was actually speaking and, from my heart, like on a stage is what I love. But and I still love the lights and the camera and all the things, but it's actually not behind a script. It's from speaking from my own heart. So, and acting is, when I was in acting class, I realized I'm like, I can't actually like access my emotions and I'm really shut down. So I wonder what's going on there. And that's what actually led me into like this journey of psychology and really figuring out myself first so that I could also like help others kind of show up in a way. But it wasn't like I could definitely act, but I wasn't like going to get an Oscar anytime soon. Do you know what I mean? And also when I started the auditioning and all that, it just wasn't for me. It was really rough and I didn't like the environment. I wasn't willing to do a lot of the things that they wanted me to do. And I just was like, okay, I didn't stick with it for too long.
You kind of have to love auditioning.
Oh, 100%.
Too, because this is like 90% of what you're doing.
Or I think you also have to love acting enough to like put yourself through the audition process.
Yes.
It's because it's so challenging. It's just like, and then also just feeling like cattle call kind of like there's just all these people in the room that are like you and the rejection, but then also the like the sleaze factor of a lot of it. It was just, I didn't want to do it bad enough, I think, is at the end of the day what it was. But I still felt like I wanted to be in the entertainment industry in some way, which we can get to later that I actually am now. So, but just not in the way that I thought, So I think, and who knows, maybe I'll show up in a part sometime in the future in one of my own movies. But it wasn't like the path led me somewhere else unexpectedly. So, but I needed to LA was still the right place for me. So I feel like it's what brought me here,
So you would how many other siblings do you have? I
have a twin brother, and then I have a 12-year younger sister who's like my best friend. She's actually coming later today. She lives in San Diego. Yeah.
So there's hope for my daughter who's 10 wants a sibling so bad.
Really?
I don't want any more kids, but now that you say you have a good relationship with,
oh my gosh, we're so close.
Because I always said oh my God, if I have another baby now, they're 11 years apart.
Yeah.
What the heck they're not going to do with each other. They're not going to be.
Well, they
probably
don't
for the first 10, 15
that's
years.
it. I didn't even know who she was. And she was so quiet and so different than me. And I just never really got to know her. And because we had completely separate lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Completely. But then when she hit her 20s, she hit 20 and I was just I have a built-in best friend. And I
just
didn't even
want
know
to ask, when did it switch? At some point, age it gets so much closer. If you're 30 and 40.
I think it was when she hit 18, 19, and I was 30.
Yeah.
And then, but we were in totally different phases. But it was the age didn't matter anymore, and we're so similar and alike. And she actually came on some retreats that I did for coaching, in Africa and all that. And I just realized, we think we're so similar. And we just never took the time really to figure that out until later. And then also, you just can't relate about certain things until they're at a certain age, So it's worth it. You should have one.
Oh my God.
No pressure. I still think about having another one too. I have 2 boys and I've always wanted a girl, but I just can't imagine starting over.
How old are your boys?
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
Yeah. So one of them's about to turn 16, which is mind-boggling. And the other one's 14. So they're so much older. Yeah. Now I feel I've passed the boat, as far as I don't know. Or if I did have more, I'd have to be 2 more. So they have each other.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Twin girls or something.
Oh my God. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so cute.
Yeah. But my husband's 10 years older than me. And he was done a long time ago.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's challenging.
But for the men, it's not really an age thing. They can have children when
technically.
they're
He just
80.
doesn't want to be 70 or 80.
That's the thing. Maybe they can't be the best dad.
Yeah, and he's a real hands-on dad and stuff, so it's important to him, and he would probably feel he, and we have plans for later to want to travel and do all these things, so it would definitely
That's the thing,
harder.
once you have your freedom back a little bit, and that I feel that so much now that she's 10.
It's true. Even at 14 and 16, I'm where are they?
Oh my God.
It's they're not around. Yes. They don't want to hang out with me. They wouldn't hang out with their friends. So much different than it used to be. Oh my gosh. So once you taste that again, you're oh.
Well, that's a different conversation. We don't have to get into the conversation yet. If I have to have another child.
Well, Coach, you want having another child and you want
she wants another one.
I do.
You have children?
I have one daughter.
Okay.
And I want another one.
Oh, she's 8, you said. Okay, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so still so much time.
There's time. Yes, but this is a shift. I didn't think there was much time left until recently.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. I love that.
So how would you describe your childhood?
I actually wrote my thesis on this.
Really?
How I would describe it.
Interesting.
It looked like the fairy tale. It absolutely looked like the perfect life. My dad was, he discovered the biotech industry basically with Genentech, which was the first company in the biotech industry. So he founded that company and created this whole industry and was super successful. My mom was a nurse and she quit to raise us. And we had this beautiful home in Hillsborough. And it was just so great looking. But on the inside, it was very tumultuous emotionally. So I felt like and I just kind of like withdrew from things. I spent a lot of time alone, and just kind of on my own. And yeah, I think
Why?
that's because
Like when you were young,
yeah, when
you
I was
mean?
young, I just
Okay.
didn't feel like my dad he was successful, but he was also like always working.
Yeah.
Like I never saw him. I'm not exaggerating.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw him. And my mom was overwhelmed with a lot of it, and so she was just kind of in her thing. And my brother needed a little bit more attention than me too. So I think I learned how to the way I learned to get attention was highly achieving. So I would try really hard to get like great grades and do my best on sports teams and like get like but it had to be like the best for me. Like that was the mentality, like the best or I'm nothing, right? So I put out so much pressure on myself, um and it ended up like really affecting me, just feeling like like so burned out and exhausted and all these things. I actually ended up I'll just be honest, I ended up in the hospital for a few weeks of
Please
that.
be honest.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. So I ended up, when I was 16, I ended up in the hospital with malnutrition, which is just so ironic because that is not like it wasn't a technical eating disorder, but really it was just the result of how hard I was going versus how little I was actually like taking care of myself. Because I was a runner and I was like, again, trying to get straight A, like everything I was doing was like high level. And then I just wasn't taking care of myself. I was not eating enough. I was not like nourishing my body. And it literally put me in the hospital and my heart like was going to stop. That was how severe it was, which I had my mom's like, oh, you look really skinny. I'm going to take you to get checked out. Stanford Hospital is like one of the best places for that. And I was like, okay, like you're crazy. I'm fine. And they were like, you're coming into the hospital now. They wouldn't even let me leave because my heart was so unstable at the time. And that was such a eye-opening moment for me. I was like so devastated that I like couldn't go and do my life. But then when I was in there, I felt actually really relieved. I was like, oh my gosh, I can take a break. Like I don't have to actually like do anything. And they like let me out of school finals and all this stuff. And I was like, I just rested for like weeks and I had fun in there with these girls and we like had a great time. And yeah, so that was the first time in my life where I was like, I'm kind of living an imbalanced life and it's not serving me at all.
And it's so much easier when it comes from the outside and somebody else is telling you you need to rest
Totally.
than yourself, especially when you're like the high achiever and
Totally.
I
needed someone to tell me.
Don't do this for
Force me.
yourself until your body forces you.
100%.
And then doctors in an hospital are just like, well, you take a break or you're going to die.
100%.
Which one is it?
It was that.
Yes.
It was literally that. I was like, oh,
okay.
Okay. I think I'll do that. Yeah. So you're right. It was a force. It was forced. And, yeah, it ended up being a lesson I've definitely taken into my life.
Why do you think your mom was overwhelmed? You just said she quit nursing to be there for you.
I think she actually, ironically enough, wanted to be a nurse. It was her passion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ironically enough, in the sense that like she didn't choose that. It was my dad that requested that.
She didn't choose to be a stay-at-home mom.
No,
yeah.
I think she was torn, just like so many women are, because I remember the story she told. She was like, when you were little and I went back to my first day of work, you and your brother wouldn't even look at me. You were so mad and so upset that I would leave you. And, she's very like sensitive and empathic, like, a lot of people in my family are. So she was struggling with that. And then my dad kind of requested like, you don't need to work. Maybe you could not work. And I think it was also hard for him that she was a nurse and like, doing all these things. So she gave it up, but I don't know that she would have chosen that. And it really was her passion. And she's always been so involved in stuff like since then, just like giving back in all these ways. And they're actually divorced now, but yeah, so I think that was they didn't have a good marriage at all. They had just a very tumultuous marriage. And so I think with all of that, it was just really hard for her, She was
As for
struggling a lot.
so many women who like their job
Yeah,
and don't want to quit,
totally.
but then feel like they have
They have
to
to.
be a good mother.
Totally. Absolutely.
But it's not as fulfilling to like just in quotation marks be a mother.
Right. If
And
that's not
it's like,
your
oh my God.
personal,
Yes, exactly.
passion.
I mean, for some it is
Yeah.
100%
Totally.
what they want to. They want to be a mother and they want to be at 100% and everything. But for others, like I had a life before I became a mother and I really I chose a passion. Like I chose be a nurse because that's my passion. And now I kind of can't do this anymore because I have to be there from, this constant feeling guilty about.
It's such a tug of war. And I experienced it myself. I had 2 babies. My husband was always gone traveling for work. And it was on me I simultaneously was trying to get my master's and be a psychologist. So I know what she went through because I was like, there were times when I just fully quit getting my master's, just totally quit it. And what should have taken me like 2 or 3 years took me 10 because of that struggle.
Yeah.
And I don't regret doing it that way because I had to. Like there were moments I was about to leave. He was filming in Austin. We were with him and I had just gotten there with the baby so we could be there. And I was going to get a nanny so I could go to school for the weekend. And I'm like, I don't know who this person is. Like, who am I leaving my child with?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like just crying in the shower, just being like, what am I doing? I can't leave. And I didn't. And that was one of those moments where I just quit because I couldn't take that guilt. And I couldn't actually rationalize it either at that moment. And I felt selfish, but then it felt horrible not doing it too.
Right.
That's what I just want to say. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. You feel horrible because you're not doing anything for yourself and you're not following your own dreams and your own things. So 100%. You feel guilty towards yourself. But then when you follow your dreams, you feel guilty towards your children.
100%. It's one of the things I do mostly now in coaching is help people through that because it's just help women.
Oh, I bet.
Women.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just such, but there is, again, going back to the hospital story, there is a balance and there is a middle ground. And if we can find it, it's so important, I think, to not just, and maybe even just for a time you sacrifice everything. And that's okay too. Because I think for me, I'm like, okay, if I can look at it as there's a few years where I'm just going to focus on this, but it's not forever. And that helped, but some people don't even want to do that, and that's totally fine. It's just a matter of finding that balance and then doing the inner work to like deal with all of those thoughts and things that are torturing you inside too. Like you're a terrible mother if you do this, or you're a terrible psychologist if you do that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff.
Oh my God.
So dealing with all of that.
That voice that never shuts up.
No, they never, and it always has something to say. Yeah. It's not nice.
So you said you were alone a lot as a child.
I was, yeah.
What was your mom doing most of the day?
She was, that's a good question. She was.
It's like, let me think, what was she doing?
I mean, I think she struggled a lot with depression, so I would often
Which was not called depression at that time, probably.
No. But, she also had my sister at age 48. So it was really hard.
Wow.
Yeah. And she almost died actually having her. So she was overwhelmed with that too. Like she just had a lot on her plate. And I think she was feeling I think it was just a lot of the emotional turmoil that she was dealing with that kind of pulled her away from being present or whatever in that time.
Do you feel she was like emotionally not available or really like physically not available?
More emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She was, it was more emotionally. Mm-hmm. And for someone that like me, who's just all about emotion, that was really a challenging dynamic. But physically, she was there and she basically gave like all that she could possibly give, To
make it the picture perfect life from the outside.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you would have had Instagram at that time,
oh my gosh,
it would have been the
so
picture
Insta-worthy.
perfect family Instagram.
It would have been. But I think another part of it looking so perfect is that nobody thinks there's anything wrong. So nobody like asks you, you know what I mean? Like how you are. Like they just assume everything's perfect and no one really takes the time. So I think the extreme of me being in the hospital was just a reflection of that, like how much I was struggling internally and then how much of a reaction that my body had to that, right? So, or that my life had to that. It was so extreme and shocking for people that even happened.
Oh,
So
especially in this picture perfect family.
100%.
What?
Yeah, it was like malnutrition is the complete opposite of what you would think that, like it didn't make any logical sense. So it was just a reflection of, that there was just this huge struggle going on that I did not feel comfortable talking about because I also felt the pressure to look perfect and seem perfect because that's what was important, it felt like, to my family, So
how was your brother's position in?
he was struggling too, but he struggled with different things like socially, and all that stuff was a little bit more challenging to him. And we did not get along. Oh my gosh, we've never gotten along.
How was
No,
we did not get along.
No, we've never gotten along. We've
still,
even now, it's not. I would love for us to be close, but I've heard it's common for twins to have this kind of relationship, like a very contentious thing, or you're like inseparable. It's one or the other, right? So for us, and I think just because of a lot of we were kind of mimicking in our parents, like we would just fight and just come at each other. And it was taking out a lot of that stuff on each other. And we were just so competitive, like very, very, like the other one felt like we needed to beat the other one. And the interesting thing is when my sister came along, because she was so young, there was just no competition. But she helped our dynamic so much because it was like we could focus on her. And she was like this amazing little creature that came into our lives. And it kind of like calmed the waters a little bit for us. But then I think it like was extra challenging for my mom, who was now almost 50 with like a toddler. That's a lot.
Yeah, and back then too.
So maybe I should think about that, having another baby, because I'm turning 47 in 2 weeks. And
what?
You totally could.
You totally could.
I would be the same age as your mom, and you're like, oh, she just almost died. And
sorry. Yeah.
like maybe
not trying to discourage you. No, but it was some complication that happened, but
I know that can happen when you're 20 also.
Anytime.
It's like, yeah.
But
I'm going to be 50 with a toddler then too.
Yeah.
Which
that would be so hard.
It would.
Okay, let's not do that then. Good.
Okay, we've discovered
chapter closed.
The answer to that.
Covered that.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That's awesome.
When did you leave the house?
I left when I was 18.
That's what I thought. I thought you went like early, first option you had, kind of like, I'm going to get out of here.
Absolutely. And I never went back. It was never even a thought for me to go back. I wanted to go and be on my own. And but my other siblings have gone back. They've lived there at times and all this stuff. It's just never been, it was a really, I wasn't comfortable there. So I needed to go. I think that was just also wanting to be in LA too, knowing that like this is where I belong. So 18, I was gone.
How did your life change after your hospital stay?
I think it's a good question. I think I learned that it was probably the first seeds of like my own self-worth there, because I was able to kind of focus on me and take care of me and realize that if I don't do that, there will be no life. So it's not just about impressing others. And it wasn't even about impressing so much as I genuinely believed that I needed to be perfect and high achieving to be loved. That was the message that I kind of created or received. And I don't think my parents necessarily, they definitely didn't do that intentionally. And I know that they loved me. But the belief that I formed was, I have to do all these things in order for anybody to love me or be accepted. And I started to realize at that time that, I need to focus on me and start to think about, well, what do I want? Because I was so relieved to be in that hospital that I'm like, maybe I don't want to be the best runner. Maybe I don't want to, get straight A's and like all this stuff. Maybe there's other things that I want to be focusing on. And so it kind of like was the beginning of that for me.
How long were you in the hospital?
30 days.
And did you do like therapy sessions?
I did. Yeah, I did. I just went through my stuff the other day, my childhood stuff. And I wrote a letter to myself, which is so interesting to look at now. And yeah, the same issues that I still struggle with on a different level were there then, of course. And one of the main ones that I wrote was I promise to work on not caring about what other people think so much. And that has been probably, if not the biggest struggle of my life. Like, I mean, I cared so much to the point where I was literally going to die, right? Because part of that, by the way, I didn't mention was I also would get, if someone would like compliment me or be like, oh, you have such a great body or such a great figure or you're so thin, I would take that as like, okay, I need to keep that. Like, I can't change that because people like that. And I need their approval. And so it became kind of a hyper focus too. I think there was this unconscious fear that like, if I eat the wrong thing or whatever, I'm going to look different or I'm going to gain weight or whatever. So there was definitely that pressure there too.
That's so interesting. Didn't we just talk about it when I went over to Taryn's house this morning to pick her up? And she was like all dolled up and makeup and hair done and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, you look so nice. And then I was like, I actually should not compliment you when you dolled up because that's exactly
we should compliment each other when we're
sending this message.
Yeah.
It's like,
you're so right. It really is.
Oh my God,
and now
you're
more
so
than
cute,
ever,
you're so pretty. But everybody always just says that when you're done, when you have your makeup done and your hair done and stuff,
like,
and then you're like, oh,
people say that you think you need to live up to, and or feel pressure to live up to, and can be one person who really like has freed themselves from that is because we spoke about Baywatch is Pamela Anderson. She was like, she was like, do you know how better I feel that I don't have to be the prettiest girl in the room anymore?
Yes.
That like I've taken that pressure off of myself. I'm like, oh my God.
I admire her
liberating.
Right?
So much. Her strength going on these red carpets, no makeup on and stuff.
It just makes me breathe easier.
Oh my God.
I know. I think collectively, all three of us just like exhaled.
We did.
Like, oh, that would be so nice.
It really is because it's like that's not even an issue for her anymore. And
that was everything she was limited to. Her body, her looks, that was her.
It was her thing. It was what she was known for.
Yeah.
And so then just her just completely taking that off the table, which I mean, she's so beautiful in a totally different way now. And I love her energy. Like when she shows up in a room, it's like, it's because it's like from the inside out, not all the things she's then put on because she doesn't wear any makeup, which is just so incredible.
Yeah, she walks red carpets in like the evening gown with no makeup.
It is so brave.
It's so brave, and I feel like it's so enlightened. It's like she's just kind of up here, and we're all operating on a different level where we're still constrained, social norms and perceptions, and
and I think it's also like self-love. It's like she's in acceptance. She's just like, this is how I am. Take it or leave it. And that's like a beautiful thing. It's just a different level of operating. It really is. But now with Instagram and the filters and like, all the things, AI, I like had AI do like a photo shoot because I was like, well, that seems easy. Like, I don't have to do the photo shoot. They'll just take me and they'll put me in like a place. And I'm like, great. And then I don't have to do it.
They put me in a business outfit. They put me in fun outfits.
But it literally gave me like a nose job. And I did all these things and I was like, what? I mean, that looks amazing. But now I feel like I need to do all
right. Now I need to live up to that.
Yeah. And I'm like, I can't post that. Like, that's not me. It's not, this isn't right. So it's kind of scary,
I'm reading a book on this right now that talks about when cell phones came out in 2012 with a front-facing camera. It was around the same time that Instagram became very popular. And there's a parallel decline in like the health of young girls and the suicide rates and
completely.
Things like that, and like the loss of self-esteem, because so many more young girls that are at that young adolescent age, now started feeling this pressure to look a certain way and compare to all the other girls that are using filters. And I mean,
imagine, the
toxic.
pressure we grew up with, like magnified times a million. Like it's so much pressure. It's so much.
I'm terrified for like the young girls. Yeah. We have to help them as much as possible.
100%. That's one reason where I'm like, okay, I didn't have a girl, but I want to still work with girls and like help as many as I can because I know what it feels like. I don't know what it feels like though to be a teenager with this new dynamic.
I know.
But we need to learn because it's scary. It is scary and it's completely affecting their mental health.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure boys on some level too in a different way. But yeah, it's scary.
Where were we? You left home, moved to LA.
Yep.
Was LA everything you were hoping would be? No. Oh, no.
It was actually really hard. I went from like a tiny private school with like 20-something people in my class to UCLA, which is like thousands.
I love UCLA.
It is amazing. I do like it.
I found that to be a shell-shocking experience as well.
Yeah.
Like just the transition from a little bubble
100%
to a huge public university, and you're just in an auditorium with 1,000 people for the first time. And it's like, you can't even absorb what the professor is saying. No. There's so many people around. Yeah. You're terrified to raise your hand and actually say something out loud.
Yeah.
That's
it's true.
Jarring.
And you don't I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere, fit anywhere. It was just like, where am I? I'm in an ocean now as opposed to like this nice little pond, which I wanted to get out of my whole life. But I'm like, now that I'm here, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I tried to remedy that by just immediately joining a sorority, which had its own really, challenges, but it did help. It did help to kind of like minimize my surroundings and feel like, okay, I at least belong somewhere, and it's smaller and I can like make this work. But it was really hard. LA was not in, it was the first year I was like, oh my God, I did not like it at all. So it took me a long time to adjust for sure. But I did eventually.
How was that adjustment? Like, how did it change? What made it better?
Well, I definitely dove head over heels into a relationship that helped, but it also was so toxic. But it was like I immediately found, someone that I could be in this like all-consuming relationship. So in a way, it was helpful. And he was actually from Palo Alto.
Oh my gosh, what's his name? No, I'm kidding.
We'll discuss later. And he was president of his fraternity, and he felt like just so cool. And like I kind of like looked for that kind of like my dad, like high achiever, successful.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. It was like a magnet, and he was so smooth. And he was like, he saw me at one of the mixers, and he made me his little sister, which is you like as a fraternity, you take on the young new freshmen, right? Like sorority girls, and you show them around. But no, he was totally like setting it up so we could be together, and he won me over, and I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah. So that was like an all-consuming thing that I have used so much of that as a relationship coach too, like knowing like I was definitely in multiple toxic relationships, but I felt like I needed to be in a relationship to feel some sort of stability. Like that's what I needed. So
what was toxic about?
Oh my God.
Everything.
So many things. Well, first of all, he was an extremist. Like he was an addict, but by the time I met him, he had gone from like cocaine to Jesus. But I mean like more than you can imagine, like 100% like born again, like charismatic believer, all this stuff. But it was so extreme. And I grew up, totally with my faith and like believing in spiritual. Like I was just like, I've always been a very spiritual person, but I was never really a religious person. And he was like so religious, and controlling. Oh my God, so controlling, but also like like a very narcissistic qualities, like very magnetizing and charming and like won everyone over that would ever meet him. I don't think he was faithful to me the whole time. He admitted once, but I'm sure there was more. But he was gorgeous and like all these things that was the reason I fell in love with him. But the toxic part was the controlling addict, love bombing, gaslighting, all the things,
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
How long?
Yeah.
Yeah. How long did that relationship
That was a
last?
saga. I mean, it went on my entire college experience. Even though he was a senior and I was a freshman, he stayed longer. And then this is in and of itself a podcast because the story is so long, but he basically dated, we broke up. We were part of this youth group. He wanted me to come to this Malibu church where Pamela Anderson, there she is again, watching coming to church. And it was like this really cool church, blah, blah, blah. But it was actually more like, to be honest, it was more like a cult. Like young people would go there that needed a place to belong, and then they would be controlled and like all these crazy things. And so we were part of that. And then we broke up. He started dating someone that I was really close to. She's my best friend to this day. But at the time that was torture.
So painful.
Horrible. Like just the worst. And then I started dating one of the pastors there, and he didn't like that. So then in his true fashion, he proposed to me.
No.
Yes.
Oh my
God. He pulled me out. I had just gotten a job on Melrose. I just graduated. And he called me at work. I hadn't talked to him for like a year. I was fully dating this other person. He's like, I need to see you. And I need to see you now. And I'm like, well, I'm at work. He's like, well, meet me outside. And I was like, okay.
So dramatic.
It's so dramatic.
Yeah.
This was part of
the allure,
it was so alluring. And he was so like, when he looked at you, it made you feel like you were the only person in the world. And he was literally going to die without you, which is, by the way, the opposite of how I grew up. So that attention was so soothing to me.
Yeah.
And so he pulls me out. He gets on one knee in the middle of the sidewalk with a Tiffany's ring. What? And says, I can't live without you anymore. Will you marry me? And I was like, what?
You haven't spoken in a year or something?
That is such a oxymoron.
It was so unbelievable. And he knew I was dating this other person. He just didn't care. He was just like, but because I had held on to him for so long, like I wanted it to work, even though there was all these things. And he knew that. So I think he used that. He thought like if I propose or do this grand gesture, he was like the king of grand gestures, then she'll say yes. He really thought I was going to say yes. Right as he's proposing, my boyfriend drives up.
No way.
That he knows because he's a youth pastor. And just remember
this is a movie.
It is.
My gosh.
I really feel like I have to make this a new movie one day.
Yes.
Which is what my husband and I do now. We literally make movies. I'm like, this has to be one.
God.
Because his entrance too was just us.
Yeah.
It's just perfect. So anyways, then I look at Jason. I'll just say Jason. And I'm like, you need to go talk to him and let him know like what you're doing, because I don't even know how to explain this. So he's like, all right, I'll go take care of it. And my my boyfriend at the time was like so angry. He was like rageful because he knows the whole saga.
Yeah.
And he's just wants nothing to do with him. So I get in the car with my boyfriend. We drive home, but then I'm like so tortured. I'm like, I think I need to have a conversation with Jason for what just happened, because I basically said no, but it was so abrupt. So we ended up having this long conversation. And
so wait, give me the scene again. He's on one knee, putting out the ring, saying,
I can't live without you.
I can't live without you.
Even though we haven't talked in a year.
Yeah.
Even though we haven't talked in a year.
Yeah. Do you want to marry me?
Can't live without you. Please. Like, I know you're the one for me. Will you marry me?
And then
I was just in shock.
No, and you walk away.
No, I didn't say no and walk away. I was in shock, and I was like, what? And that literally was when my boyfriend drove up. So then I was like, I'm like, obviously I don't know what to say to this right now. I mean, I'm with him, and I'll make up names. Joe. I was like with Joe, dating Joe, and it's fine. Jason proposed, and then I'm like, you need to talk to him. And then Joe was so angry that he was like, just get in the car. And I went with him and just left Jason basically there. I remember looking,
oh my gosh,
just standing there.
This is
like
a movie.
It was a movie. And then I started to feel really bad about that. I was like, well, he just did this grand gesture.
So
and
vulnerable.
So vulnerable.
He took a big
And now I
risk.
just feel like so guilty.
Yeah. Oh my
and I was not, to be honest with you, I didn't love Joe really at all. He was just a safe person that I felt like I was almost like helping me heal. So I told Joe, I was like, I need to go talk to Jason. I need to have a conversation with him. So that's exactly what I did. I remember we went to, what's that? The Mondrian with that restaurant. I forget what it is. But anyways, so he was like, okay, I'll meet you there. And I was like, okay. So we met there and then it was a hotel. So he's like, let me just get us a room. I'm like, okay, for the sake of talking, I'll do that so we can continue talking. And
yeah, right.
Right. And then of course he wanted more than that, but I was like, no, we have to have this conversation. And we talked for so many hours. At the end of it, I was like, you know what? I need to think about this. Like, I need to actually get my bearings because I don't really love Joe. I loved you for so long, but this just feels weird and crazy. And it was what I wanted for so long, but now I'm just so confused. So I took some time for myself. And this is really the nail in the coffin of Jason and I. When I finally decided, okay, I'm going to leave Joe and I actually want to give me and Jason a real chance. And I'm going to like respond to that. But I needed a few days to do that, right? So I go and I find him. This is my grand gesture. I go and I find him. He's at a friend's house. He's helping them paint. He's like covered in paint and all this stuff. He comes out and I was like, you know what? I thought about it and I actually do like, yes, like I will actually give this a shot. So I'll receive your proposal. He looks at me and he's like, no.
What?
It's like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, the moment is ruined.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, mother effer.
Oh my
This is exactly our relationship. He will do all the things to get me. And then the second that he has
you.
me, it's that.
Oh my
gosh. That was my real like moment of like, get out.
Yeah.
And never look back. But honestly, it was like a 10-year thing. So
wow.
The push-pull
for 10 years.
That would be very important in the movie because I just thought then you say yes and then you're in the relationship again. And I was thinking of this movie and I'm like, everybody would say, oh my God, this is so cheesy.
Totally. Yeah.
Like this never happened. You know, like these movies where you're like, these scenes in your life where you're like, if this would be in a movie, everybody would say, well, this never happens. Yeah. But it happens.
You actually like the movie now, Sarah?
Well, now it makes it into like a thriller, like psychological, like.
It makes it into so many things. And there's so many things I haven't.
Not thriller, but in like a psychological shit place, kind of
totally.
Like, oh.
But there's also this cult in the background basically saying, you're his wife. You're supposed to marry him. And then the other half of them telling my friend that he was dating, no, you're supposed to marry him. He's your husband. God says this. And it was that happening too. So we were just like now extra confused because we're so vulnerable and like confused and we just want to do the right thing. That was kind of that moment for me where I was like, well, maybe this is meant to be. And maybe I should give this my all, you know? There were so many factors basically controlling me. Kind of like when I was younger, I forgot myself, right? And I lost myself completely. So thank God he did that at that moment because I then.
So true. Thank God he said, no, the moment's gone now.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
What a gift, but not at the time, I'm sure.
But in that moment, you're walking back to him and you're like, okay. And then
No, it was the worst response he could have ever done, but it needed to be for me to actually end it and just be like, this is bullshit. Mm-hmm. This is like utter bullshit. And I can't do this anymore. But part of the wound that he was tapping into was, I want to be loved and I want to be the one you choose. Actually, I think that was it. I want to be chosen.
Yeah.
That's always, not always, but that's in so many cases, so many situations the case. Like
100%.
Why so many women are with like, so to speak, assholes.
Totally.
Because we live for that high of when they choose us.
Because
100%.
this person chooses me and treats me like a princess. Even if he just treats me like a princess 10% of the time, he over and over and over chooses me.
100%. And that was the ultimate being chosen, because he had left the other woman for me. And then he didn't even care about my relationship. It was like the like little girl fantasy of like, oh, he doesn't care. It's this grand gesture. I'm the only thing that matters. Oh my God, he overcame so much.
He came on the white horse, right?
Came on the white horse with a Tiffany's ring.
The knight on the white horse with the Tiffany's ring. Yes. It was.
I'm
kidding.
So crazy. So how did you like pick yourself up from that? Because I'm sure it was devastating in the moment.
It was really hard. And the thing is, when we first broke up was the ultimate, I don't even know how to get off the floor, like situation where I'm like, I can't function. Like it was like ripping off a limb. And I'd never had my heart broken. Like, so that was my first. And then also just with all the other elements, it just felt like I couldn't survive it. So I feel like because I had been through that, there was a level of maybe a little bit more resilience, because I'm like, all right, I've been through this once. I can do it again. And I didn't allow myself to be in that for too long. So it wasn't as hard, right?
Yeah.
But it was definitely just this. And then I thought after that, I was like, this is the way that I was probably my own version of like a love addict at the time, because I was like, well, if it's not him, maybe I should go back to Joe. And Joe was fine with that. He was like, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh,
and then
Joe.
He proposed. He did propose too. in Greece. Yeah, he did. And I wanted that so badly to work, because in my head, it was only the two people that existed was Jason and Joe. And I'm like, well, one of them has to work. And then I remember someone saying to me, if you're confused about these two, it's probably neither.
Oh my God, what a good sentence.
It was one of the best sentences I've ever heard in my life. It was like the guiding light, but I was pissed hearing it. I was like, what are you talking about?
That's not helpful.
One of these has to be it. Or else, God forbid, I'm alone and I have to like, and so I did after I said yes to Joe for a while. My mom said, you're not really excited about planning the wedding. Like, maybe this isn't it for you. And I was like, you're right. It's not it. I just wanted it so badly because of all this whole fiasco with this other situation.
Right.
And so I ended that too. So that was a real like, okay, I'm alone. And I remember at that point sitting in Malibu, I was house sitting, like one of my favorite places in the world. So it was such a great gift to be there during this time. But I remember sitting out on the balcony looking over the ocean. And that's always been like, just my spiritual place to be. And I remember just being like, all right, I'm done trying to do this. Like, I surrender and I'm letting go. And I'm literally just going to see what unfolds on my path that is actually right and healthy and all of that. And not very long after, Jeff, who was another J, came into my life. But that, and I wouldn't have chosen that, because I remember saying, I want to be single for like at least a year because I need that. And I need, all these things. But it was, and that's when Jeff came in, I was like, oh, no. Like, we're not doing this. I am single. And that actually, like, he really was determined to really win me over, but also respect that I needed it. So it was like this kind of new experience where I was like, this is interesting. And it really made me curious. But I ended up giving in eventually to him and dating him. And then that was like no brainer. Like, this is the person for me. And we ended up actually getting married pretty quickly, but it was a journey that I'm like, okay, it makes sense now as I look back on it. And I still thought like I needed alone time. I need to do this thing. But now that I do what I do, my husband and I, like, I think if things hadn't have happened like that, I wouldn't have learned what I've learned.
Is he your now husband?
Yeah, 18 years.
So what felt different about Jeff when you realized so quickly, like it felt different and it felt good? And I'm so curious, what was different?
I never really believed that saying, when you know, until him. And it's a really hard thing to explain, but it's like, almost like you recognize someone. You know what I mean? Like, this is my person. I don't even know why logically, but it just felt like, I don't know. And I was like, well, now I was super cautious because I was like, is this really toxic? Is this one of those things? And yes, there have been so many things that we worked through in our marriage. Our marriage has been a really challenging. It was for the first 10 years. Like the fact that we made it is a miracle, truly. Because there's so many things that would have said that we wouldn't. And we went through pretty much maybe almost all things you could go through in a marriage where you're like, that would be the end right there. But we decided every time to stick through it. And the biggest thing about him is that there was this like determination, but then also like this growth mindset that I had that like made me feel almost safe. Like with Jason, I just felt like there's just no making this person happy. Like there's no, it just felt so unsafe. Like anything I did wrong at any point was going to like end this kind of like I had to be a certain way or whatever. And the push-pull thing with Jeff, it just felt so safe and like he wasn't going anywhere. And he was so focused on me and he knew what he wanted. And then he also had this mindset and this mentality of he felt, I don't know, stable, is that the word? But then also at the same time, because I had felt that with Joe, like the stability and healthiness, but I thought with Joe, I'd just have to give up the chemistry part and just like all this. I didn't feel like in love. And I'm like, well, maybe that's bad. But with Jeff, he had everything. I was like, okay, well, he's super attractive. I feel a lot of chemistry with him. But then there's also this other side that's like, it just felt very like healthy. And he respected me and what I said I wanted, whereas others had like pushed through those boundaries. He just was like, there was a lot of qualities like that. But my favorite thing was he just felt so clear about the fact that he wanted to be with me and he was so determined to make that happen. And it didn't feel like fleeting, like obviously it was in the past, like, okay, yes, oh no. It was not that at all. It was like, he had just made this kind of, we both felt like we kind of recognized each other and like, oh, who are you? Like, you feel so familiar to me. And like my mom described him, I brought him home. She was like, he feels like home. And that's honestly how he felt. Like home. That's what I think the best description is. He felt like home.
Great description.
Yeah. And logically, it didn't make any sense because I obviously didn't know him, but it just felt that way. And it was pretty amazing. So, yeah.
How did you guys meet?
He had a friend take him to that like Malibu church place. And I'm laughing because he was also engaged to a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. And she was like this crazy party girl, like go, like all these things, which were fun. It was fun for him. He was a stuntman. Like they had this like fun life, whatever. But when it came down to it, he was like, this is not the mother of my children. This doesn't feel like this is more fun than it is anything else. And they ended up, he just felt like overall something was missing, right? And that's exactly how I felt in my engagement, was like with the Joe, was like, there's just something missing and I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
I want this to be it. On paper, it should be it, but it's not it. And we both broke up with our fiancés for that reason. So right around the same time we had done that. And he kind of was around that the mutual friends and stuff. And I remember we saw each other at a party and it was like we had seen each other before, but it was like this time it was just very like, who's that? And then we had our birthdays a day apart. So, but he's 10 years older, or 9 years older. And we started just joking about like, well, we have this similar friends. So why don't we like have a party together? And so it kind of just went from there. And yeah, so it was just kind of through that whole thing. It was almost like he like came and got me out of it. It was like, let's go somewhere else that's healthier than this environment, because it was such a unhealthy, controlling environment. So
did you both stop going to church?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Did you both agree that it wasn't
Oh, yeah. We had weird experiences there. There was very like weird things. Like he was, once I was like sick or whatever, and he was like, oh, well, I'll say a prayer for her. And the leader was like, oh, no, I'll pray. Only I can do that. Like stuff like that, where it was just like, what? It was a very disempowering place, and a place that was just not what I believe a church should ever be. You know, it went really far off the rails as far as that goes. It's over now. It like
Doesn't
exploded.
exist.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
Multiple times over, it like fell apart because it was just run by very like narcissistic, controlling people, and that just always trickles down. You know. So if I look at the theme of my life, we see narcissists everywhere.
Right. But
and I'm saying that as a
impress-
psychologist, so I can say that for real, not just throwing that word out.
Yeah.
I know
true.
sometimes this word is a little bit overused. Like
It is.
a lot of things are overused.
It really
these
can
days.
be. But for real, like if a narcissist is really there, like they are some of the most destructive people on the planet, you know? And
Yes.
if they're a true, tried and true narcissist, like a narcissistic personality disorder. And I absolutely have had those in my life. And they've definitely taught me a lot too, right? They're like some of our greatest teachers, but not people that you want in your life forever. It's
No.
like, bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's make the turn from, did you still wanted to be an actress the time you met your husband? Because he is in the entertainment industry, right?
Yeah.
Was he at that time?
Yes, he was. He was a very successful stuntman, actor. He had starred in like a movie with Jet Li, and he made a name for himself in a way. Like he was like a real working actor, stuntman. And I was still dabbling in it, but I knew that like my heart wasn't really in it. But yes, I was still acting at the time, and I still wanted to be. But then I looked at him. He would audition and get every single part. And I was like, what?
Oh.
Yeah, he was that guy. I was like, well, that's how it should be. Like maybe if you're good at that, maybe I should be getting like parts, and you know, and it just looked so easy for him, which made me feel like maybe I wasn't meant to do it. I don't know. But yeah, so he was doing that and feeling like, honestly, like marrying that, I was like, that's good for me. Like I still have a taste of the industry without really being in it, you know, and it was fun. We would do.
It could also be the opposite. If you still
jealous.
would have wanted it,
Yeah.
and he's getting all of this,
Yeah.
it could end pretty quickly because
Totally.
you're just like jealous and I want his life
Totally.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was good that you actually didn't want it, honey.
Yeah, there were definitely times when I was resentful that he was on set living this life that I dreamed about, and I was at home cleaning up the floor for like the third time with my baby. So during those years, especially because those were the sacrifice years where I would move with him where he was filming, North Carolina for 9 months, Austin for 9 months. So that means I didn't have any friends either. So I like uprooted myself, put myself in a home. I had to like make a home for a few months, had the babies, and you know, seemingly like they were just all out on set, and I was literally here like. And I remember crying one day on the floor, just the third time cleaning up crumbs, and I was just like, "This is my life." And it felt so hard. So yes, those moments were, but I think that was more because I wanted also to have something I was passionate about. Didn't necessarily mean I wanted to be on set. But it was, it highlighted that the imbalancing again, where I'm like, okay, I can do this for a time, but I can't. And there were other wives of actors on the shows that we were on where they were like, yeah, you can't go with him everywhere and keep uprooting your life and living like this. It's not sustainable for you. You're not going to be happy. And I was like, okay, it's a good point.
It's a good point.
So I need to
build my own life.
Yeah, and ironically enough, that's how it had to be once they were in kindergarten. I couldn't keep leaving. And it really forced me to be like, well, what is next for me? What do I want to do if it's not acting, you know? So.
Well, you studied something else. What did you do with all the knowledge and all the degrees that you got at UCLA?
Well, I used that to then go to graduate school and get my master's degree in psychology. And then I was debating at that point, do I want to be a psychotherapist, a licensed psychotherapist, or is it something else. And the idea of becoming a licensed psychotherapist for me personally was very confining. And I was like, that's not quite it. Like, it's close, but I want to actually be able to tell my story. Most therapists cannot disclose anything about themselves, right? Like, they would never probably be doing podcasts.
Yeah.
Or certainly not talking to their clients about their experiences, which how can you really, well, you can. It's a different kind of help, but I personally felt like I needed to be able to talk about those things openly and freely. And then I also felt like I wanted to be able to coach them, which is different than being a therapist. Therapist is very reserved and like, you don't really ever talk, like tell your opinion or tell them what to do, right? And I don't tell my clients now what to do, but I can guide them in a way that's much freer being a coach than a therapist. So it took me so far, and I'm glad I did that, because some people need to know that I have that, credibility to be able to trust my coaching. But I knew when it was time to also I was about to then keep going and get a PhD, and I had this idea that my dad had always wanted me to be a doctor. So I realized at some point, I'm like, okay, I'm doing this again. Like, I'm doing this for him, but what do I want?
Yeah.
And I just realized, I'm like, okay, there has to be a point at which, again, I stop like living this for this idea of what might make my dad happy, which at the end, I think he literally just wanted me to be happy. But I think I believed he wanted me to be a doctor. So I kind of started to follow that road. But when I hit the master's degree, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done with school. I'm going to go create my own thing now. And that's what I did. So hopefully that answers.
When did you have your babies? Like, what was the timeline?
Yeah. So I married. I got married to Jeff at 26. I was very young, but totally felt ready to be married. I'd want to be married my whole life. And then I had my first son at 28. And then I had my second one at 30. And then I'm trying to think of in there, I remember being pregnant, getting my master's degree. So when I had married Jeff, and I was kind of flailing like, okay, I don't really know if I want to act anymore. What do I do? But that was another thing my dad always said, if you don't make it, go to graduate school, right? So I kind of, again, had this agenda in my head, but I'm like, if I went to graduate school, what would I do? And it was psychology because of all the things I had learned. Okay. So I decided to apply for that I think like 27. And then started to get my degree, and then I was pregnant, and I was like having a really hard time focusing. Who knew that being pregnant takes your brain away?
It does.
Right?
Yes.
So I was like really struggling, but I got through the first year, and then I took a hiatus, had the baby, thought I would be able to go back easily, but then was not. So, I did go back, and then I have my other child, and so I took another hiatus. So again, like I said, it was just kind of simultaneously doing all these things, and I didn't know what it was like to be a mother or what kind of attention I would need to be giving. So I think I was learning that as I went along. But I really felt every time I gave up getting my master's, I just felt so strongly, go back. You need to at least finish. Just finish, So, but it was that tug of war for years, right? So that was, I think I probably graduated when I was like early to mid 30s. Yeah. And then I decided like, okay, I'm going to veer off and create my own business right around the time when Tristan my older one was starting kindergarten and stuff. That's when I started my business. So.
And how did that start? How did you make that decision? Client, like.
Yeah, I actually had a mentor. Her name was Martha Beck, and people in the coaching industry know. She's also Oprah's life coach. She's like known as like the greatest life coach of all time. That's literally what people call her. She is amazing. She really is. She kept popping up in my email address. I'm like, who is this Martha Beck? For like this program that she had for life coaching. And I was like, well, it was like calling me, and I was like, I think I need to do this. So I took this 1-year program after my master's to get life coaching training from her. And then I met like the most amazing people in there that were so like-minded and we thought the same way. And then they encourage you to just start coaching, just whoever, right? And putting yourself out there. And our people were there wanting to be coached. Like I just reached out to a friend who I hadn't talked to in a long time, and she like really, her life was completely in upheaval. And I started to notice people in crisis were really the ones that I could help, because a crisis is like a total wake up moment. Like, and there's something that needs to shift in our life during a crisis so we can use it. And a lot of times the crisis is a divorce or your relationship is ending. And I have a lot of single moms that I work with, and because it's such a huge thing, you know, and it's scary, right? Like it's so scary. So I just started to work with people in crisis. And then over time, it became even more focused into relationships. And I just kind of became known then as like a relationship coach. And I think because my husband and I had gone through so much that I was like, yep, I've got the experience. And not to mention all the stories I just told you before, Jeff. Right. And I have the degrees and all the things. So I think they always say to like niche down, you know, in your business. But there's times when I feel like, but there's so much more than just relationships too that I talk with my clients about. It's so much more than that too. So I struggle with that sometimes. I'm like, it's not just relationships. It's just that a lot of times the crisis in the relationship is why people find me and want to start working with a coach, right? But from that place, we discover so much about ourselves, right? It's an opportunity to really learn and grow.
What's the biggest problem you see people having in relation?
Right now, I would say it's lack of commitment. There's a lot of, but I have a lot of divorced friends. So I think a lot of my divorced friends, I wouldn't necessarily go back and be like, you need to be committed to that person. But I think I'm talking more about a commitment to look at the issue that's causing you to want to leave, right? On both sides. It can't just be one side. There were multiple times where I thought for sure me and Jeff were going to end, but he would always come around and be like, okay, there's something deeper going on and I need to figure this out. There's a reason I'm doing this. And he had an extremely traumatic childhood, like the worst childhood I've ever heard of in my life. And that was all affecting him now. It was all affecting him in his relationship with me. And I was, because of my own experience, I was like, I could see that. I'm like, I know you're not doing these things because you don't love me, but there's something deeper that's driving you, you know, to hurt me or to hurt our relationship. And he wanted to figure it out, because what he really wanted was a family and marriage and a happy life that he didn't have. But what he was creating was not that.
Right.
Right. So in vice versa, I showed up like a freaking Stepford wife. Like I was like, I am a robot and I'm perfect and I will, what is all
do
your needs?
I
will do anything you ask and I will lose myself completely to make you happy. Right. And that was the pattern, again, showing up from my childhood in my marriage. So I also had an invitation and an opportunity to look at that. So maybe that's more a way to say it is, relationships are mirrors for us. And if we're willing to maybe stay a little longer, or to stay with the idea that, okay, this is showing me something and I need to get it, right? And sometimes it's showing you need to stand up for yourself and leave. Sometimes it's showing you that. But I think as long as you just go in with like, there's a lesson here, there's a message for me in this relationship, I need to get it. What's happening right now, a lot of times it's just a lack of, like, it's just a swipe, right? Like on our dating apps.
Right. It's too easy.
It's too easy.
To hit
There's
the
always
eject
something
button.
better, right? Over here. And especially for men, like a lot of this is men's jobs. Like I give so much credit to my husband for actually being willing to do the work, because so many people that I have talked to, they're like, well, he's just not willing. And I'm like, that's hard. When they're not willing, what are you supposed to do? So there's this lack of like masculine commitment and this muscle that men need to be in a relationship. And they have so much power in that when they're not, that now it's like it's being weakened by a lot of these things like dating apps and online anything and immediate gratification. And I'm raising 2 boys, so I think about this a lot, because I'm like, it's important, you know? So yeah, does that answer your question?
We're going to take a break here.
Yep.
Sorry about that. We're going to continue our conversation with Jenn next week.
Sorry.
And it's such a good one. So you should definitely not miss that one.
Come back. If you care about your attachment style or masculine and feminine energy, come back because we got jam-packed episode next week for you.